Welcome back to Haunted World, where we delve into the chilling and mysterious realms of true crime. Today, we're embarking on a journey through a case that is not only filled with unexpected twists, but also reveals the darker sides of human nature. This is the story of Sharon Marshall, a tale woven with secrets, betrayal, and tragedy that feels as if it were ripped straight from the pages of a suspenseful thriller. But rest assured, every detail is rooted in reality. Our story begins in 1975, when a young girl named Suzanne Marie Savakis was just around 5 or 6 years old. She had a mother, Sandra Sandy Chipman, and 3 siblings. At the time, her mother was struggling financially and made a decision that would ultimately change all of their lives forever. She married a man named Franklin Delano Floyd. Floyd presented himself as a caring stepfather, but in reality, he was a convicted criminal with a dark and violent past. He had already spent time in prison for a string of offenses, including sexual assault, attempted kidnapping, and bank robbery. But Sandra had no idea about the true nature of the man she had just married. Shortly after their marriage, Sandra was sentenced to 30 days in jail for writing bad checks. When she was released, she returned home, only to find that her children were gone. Franklin Delano Floyd had disappeared with all of them. Sandra was later able to recover 2 of her children, who had been left in foster care. But her eldest daughter, Suzanne, was never seen by her family again. Franklin had taken her, and from that moment on, he controlled every aspect of her life. For years, Suzanne lived under different names. The most well-known alias she was forced to use was Sharon Marshall. Floyd raised her as his own daughter, moving frequently to avoid suspicion. Despite the horror she was living in, Suzanne, or Sharon as she was known, was incredibly intelligent and ambitious. She excelled in school and even won a full scholarship to Georgia Tech to study aerospace engineering. But she never got to follow her dreams. The man who had stolen her life made sure she would never escape. Instead of letting her go to college, Floyd forced her into a life of crime and exploitation. By the late 1980s, he had relocated with her to various states, making her work as an exotic dancer. He controlled her completely, making sure she could never run away. During this time, Sharon became pregnant and gave birth to a son named Michael Hughes. The identity of Michael's biological father remains uncertain, but what is known is that Franklin Delano Floyd claimed the boy as his own. In 1990, Sharon Marshall was living under yet another identity. This time, she was known as Tanya Hughes. She was married to a man named Clarence Hughes, though it is believed this marriage was arranged by Floyd to further cover his tracks. On April 30th, 1990, Tanya was found gravely injured on the side of a highway in Oklahoma City. She had been hit by a car in what initially appeared to be a tragic accident. However, the circumstances surrounding her death raised many questions. Doctors quickly realized that she had suffered severe injuries before the accident, injuries that suggested she had been beaten. Witnesses also reported seeing Franklin Delano Floyd acting suspiciously near the scene. 2 days later, Tanya Hughes, who was actually Suzanne Marie Savakis, died in the hospital. She was only in her early 20s. At her funeral, Floyd showed up with their son, Michael, but something was off. He barely seemed upset about her death. Instead, he acted controlling and aggressive, trying to prevent anyone from asking too many questions. When people from the community began looking into her past, they made a chilling discovery. Tanya Hughes, the woman everyone thought they knew, did not exist. There were no official records of her before a few years prior. The real question was, who was she? Following Sharon's death, Floyd took Michael Hughes and went on the run. Eventually, the authorities caught up with him in 1994, and Michael was placed in foster care. By this time, investigators had begun piecing together the puzzle of Sharon's true identity. But before they could get answers, Floyd did something unimaginable. In September 1994, he walked into Michael's elementary school in Oklahoma with a gun. He forced the principal into a car at gunpoint, demanding that he drive him to where Michael was being kept. Once they arrived, he took Michael and vanished. The boy was never seen again. Years later, Floyd finally confessed to what happened. He admitted to murdering Michael shortly after the kidnapping, claiming that he wouldn't have been a normal child anyway due to his upbringing. It was a heartbreaking end for the little boy who had already lost so much. During their investigation, authorities discovered that Floyd was also connected to another murder. In 1989, a woman named Cheryl Nkomeso, a co-worker of Sharon's at a strip club, had gone missing. Her skeletal remains were later found near a highway in Florida. In 1995, a crucial piece of evidence linked Floyd to her death: an old briefcase containing photographs of Cheryl being brutally beaten. The evidence was undeniable. Floyd was charged with her murder and sentenced to death. It wasn't until years later that DNA testing officially confirmed that Sharon Marshall was actually Suzanne Marie Savakis, the little girl who had been stolen decades earlier. Franklin Delano Floyd remained on death row in Florida for years until he died of natural causes in January 2023. This case is one of the most disturbing and heartbreaking true crime stories of all time. A little girl was stolen from her family, forced to live under false identities, manipulated, and abused for her entire life. Even after her death, it took decades for the truth to come to light. And what makes it even more terrifying, cases like this still happen today. If you found this story disturbing, make sure to subscribe to Haunted World for more cases like this. And remember, sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones from horror movies. They're the ones that actually happened. This case feels like suspenseful thriller but rooted in reality. 5 bodies, 5 young lives cut brutally short. A killer who didn't just murder, he played with his victims. And a college town that would never sleep soundly again. This is the story of the Gainesville Ripper. On August 24, 1990, a Friday night in Gainesville, Florida, students laughed, drank, made plans for the weekend. But in one small apartment just off campus, 2 roommates had no idea they were being watched. Sunja Larson, 18 years old, bright, ambitious, just starting her freshman year at the University of Florida. Christina Powell, 17, her best friend. They'd only lived together for a few weeks. They still had unpacked boxes in their rooms. They never saw him coming. The killer slipped in through the sliding glass door. No forced entry, no struggle, just silence. And then, the unthinkable. When police arrived the next morning, they found a scene so horrific, even seasoned detectives froze. The girls weren't just killed. They were posed, displayed, as if the killer wanted them to be seen. And the worst part? He wasn't done. 3 days later, another apartment, another pair of students. Tracy Poles, 23, Manuel Tabawada, 23, friends, just gone. The same method, the same brutality, the same staging. This wasn't just murder. This was a performance. And the audience? Everyone who dared to look. The city erupted in terror. Students fled campus. Parents demanded answers. And the police, they had nothing. No suspects, no motive, just 5 bodies, and a killer who vanished into the night. But then, a break in the case. His name was Danny Rolling, 35 years old, a drifter, a thief, a man with a lifetime of violence trailing behind him. Had been in and out of jail for years. Armed robbery, assault. But this was different. This was something darker, something inhuman. In his own words, he later described the killings as taking their souls. He didn't just want them dead. He wanted them remembered. But pride would be his downfall. When police finally caught him after a botched robbery in neighboring Ocala, they didn't know they had the Gainesville Ripper. Not at first, but the evidence, the DNA, the chilling confessions, it all pointed to one man. Danny Rolling stood trial in 1994. He showed no remorse, no fear, only satisfaction. Judge verdict death by injection. And on October 25, 2006, the state of Florida made sure he never killed again. 5 innocent lives, a killer who walked among them, and a question that still lingers in the humid Florida air. Was Danny Rolling truly alone that summer? Or was there something, or someone, else lurking in the shadows? The case is closed, but the fear. Sunday evening in Sarasota, Florida. 11-year-old Carly Brucia had spent the day with a friend and was on her way home, just a short walk. Nothing out of the ordinary, but someone was watching. And then it happened. A security camera at a car wash captured the last few moments of Carly's freedom. A grainy black and white image, a man in a uniform, approaching, speaking to her, reaching out. And then, she was gone. This is the story of a crime that shook the nation. A case that left an indelible mark on the justice system, forcing us to ask the terrifying question: how many monsters walk among us, unnoticed? February 1st, 2004. Sarasota, Florida. It was a warm evening, a typical Florida sunset casting a golden glow over the streets. Carly Brucia, a bright and energetic 11-year-old girl, was walking home from a friend's house. The journey was short. She had done it many times before, but on this night, something felt different. Unbeknownst to Carly, someone was waiting for her. Someone who had no intention of letting her make it home. Security footage from a nearby car wash would later reveal the horrifying truth. A man, dressed in what appeared to be a uniform, approached Carly as she walked past. He spoke to her, calm, authoritative. Perhaps he pretended to be a police officer, or maybe he simply demanded she follow him. Whatever he said, it worked. Carly hesitated, looked around, then, helplessly, she obeyed. The man took her arm, led her away, and they vanished into the night. What happened next was a nightmare beyond imagination. When Carly didn't come home, her family immediately knew something was wrong. Her mother, Susan Shorpen, called friends, neighbors, anyone who might have seen her daughter. But no one had. Panic set in. The police were contacted. Officers arrived quickly, knowing that every second was crucial in a missing child case. They scoured the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking questions. And then, they found it. The car wash surveillance tape. What they saw on that grainy black and white screen would haunt them forever. There she was, Carly, walking alone. Then, a man, tall, stocky, wearing a uniform, stepping into the frame. He reached for her, and just like that, she was gone. The video sent shockwaves across the country. It aired on every major news channel. America watched in horror as the final moments of Carly's freedom played out on their screens. Who was this man? The FBI joined the search, working alongside local police. The pressure was on. A tip line was flooded with calls. The blurry image of the man in uniform, his face barely visible, was analyzed, enhanced, and spread across the media. And then, a name emerged: Joseph Smith, a man with a past, a criminal record filled with drug charges, violence, and failed attempts at rehabilitation. A man who should have been behind bars, but wasn't. Smith was no stranger to law enforcement. A drifter, a drug addict, his rap sheet stretched back years. But somehow, despite numerous arrests, he had always managed to slip through the cracks. When officers tracked him down, he denied everything. But the evidence was mounting. Witnesses placed him near the scene. His history of violence made him an obvious suspect. And then a chilling discovery. Carly's lifeless body was found behind a church, discarded like trash, left in the dirt. The nation's worst fears were confirmed. Carly Brucia was gone. Joseph Smith stood trial, facing the full weight of his crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. The surveillance footage, the DNA, the damning testimony. The jury deliberated. The verdict was swift. Guilty. A death sentence was handed down. But for Carly's family, there was no justice, only an unbearable emptiness where their daughter once was. Years passed. Appeals were filed. Smith remained on death row, a hollow shell of a man. And then, in 2022, fate decided his punishment. Joseph Smith died in prison, not by execution, but by illness, a fate far kinder than what he had given Carly. Carly Brucia's story is more than just a tragic headline. It's a warning, a reminder that predators walk among us, hidden in plain sight, that the justice system sometimes fails to keep them behind bars. Carly's face, frozen in that grainy surveillance footage, is an image burned into history, a haunting reminder of innocence stolen. We tell these stories not to instill fear, but to ensure that the past is never forgotten. Because the monsters, they're still out there, and they're waiting. Fire can destroy evidence. Fire can erase secrets, but fire can also betray a killer. October 1996. A night, a house inside, a woman trapped, burning alive. Her name was Roxanne Duran, and her death was no accident, because when the smoke cleared, the evidence told a different story. A story of scratches, a story of blood, a story of a husband who wasn't grieving. He was lying. The 911 call came in just after midnight. Derek Duran's voice frantic, desperate. "My wife is inside. Please, hurry." But when firefighters arrived, something felt off. First, the scratches. 3 deep gashes on Derek's face. "The dog did it," he said. But the dog was outside, locked in the yard, untouched by the flames. Then the blood. A single drop on his pants. Roxanne's blood. She must have cut herself cooking, Derek claimed. But the autopsy told a darker truth. Roxanne didn't die from the fire. She was dead before the flames ever touched her. The propane line, disconnected, a deliberate act. The fire was no accident. It was staged, a cover-up. But for what? The prosecution argued Derek attacked Roxanne, strangled her, then set the fire to hide the crime. But the defense fought back. No proof of strangulation, no murder weapon, just suspicions. And yet, the jury believed him guilty. Manslaughter, arson, 10 years in prison. But even after the verdict, the questions lingered. Did they get it right? Or was Derek Duran the wrong man? Derek served his time, walked free, built a new life, even remarried. But true crime fans, they never forgot. Because here's the thing about fire. It doesn't just destroy, it exposes. And the cracks in Derek's story, they never fully healed. So what really happened that night? Was it murder or a terrible mistake? One thing's certain. In the ashes of Roxanne Duran's death, the truth is still. She was young, full of dreams, and far from home. But someone was watching her every move. And one day, she disappeared. What happened next became one of the most disturbing stories the world has ever known. Lindsay Hawker was born on May 5, 1984, in the town of Ruislip in London, England. She was known for her vivacious and warm personality. In 2006, Lindsay decided to embark on a new adventure and moved to Japan to teach English. Inspired by her passion for teaching and love for travel in Japan, Lindsay quickly adapted to her new life, building friendships and enjoying the rich cultural experiences the country offered. She was noted for her dedication to her students and enthusiasm in the classroom. Her friends remembered her warmth and kindness, painting a picture of a vibrant and promising young woman with a bright future. On March 24, 2007, Lindsay met Tatsuya Ichihashi at a bar in Tokyo, where she was enjoying a night out with a few friends. Ichihashi was charming, appearing friendly and appealing. They engaged in conversation, and despite warning signs, Lindsay decided to go to his apartment after the decision would prove fateful. Reports later suggested that Ichihashi was lying about his age and even his background, further demonstrating how easily someone can be deceived. Masking true intentions behind a facade of charm, friends began to grow concerned when Lindsay did not return home the following day. She was expected to attend a gathering with friends but never showed up. Panic set in when her friends reported her disappearance to the police. The initial response included reviewing security footage from the area, which revealed Lindsay leaving the bar with Ichihashi days past. The local community, alongside the authorities, intensified their search efforts. Missing posters featuring Lindsay's face were plastered across Tokyo, drawing public attention, and the investigation quickly focused on Ichihashi as the prime suspect. Police discovered that he had gone into hiding after Lindsay's disappearance. His actions in the following days included suspicious behaviors, such as avoiding contact and attempting to dispose of evidence. Lindsay's friends, family, and the local community remained hopeful yet increasingly anxious. The media spotlight intensified as the search operations ramped up, showcasing the concern of a nation that prided itself on safety and security. On March 30th, 2007, a breakthrough came when authorities discovered Lindsay's body buried in a bathtub filled with concrete on a property in Ichihashi's father's home, located in Chiba Prefecture. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation, leading to widespread outrage, and Suro, the discovery was heartbreaking for Lindsay's loved ones, transforming public interest into a deep expression of grief. The tragedy of her violent death overshadowed the vibrancy she had brought to those around her, serving as a stark reminder of the potential shadows lurking even in safe places. With Ichihashi now officially a fugitive, an international manhunt was initiated. He made headlines as he evaded authorities for more than 2 years. His case became emblematic of the potential dangers facing women abroad and the importance of vigilance during this time. Ichihashi changed his appearance to evade capture, using various aliases and frequently moving between locations. This cat-and-mouse game captured media attention, peeling back layers from his persona and revealing a chilling reality underlining trust and deception. In 2009, Ichihashi was finally apprehended when he tried to seek medical assistance after an injury sustained during an attempted robbery. At this point, he was recognized because of the widespread media coverage and the details released about his appearance following his arrest. The trial began in 2011. It was marked by the emotional testimonies of Lindsay's friends and family, highlighting her kindness and potential future. Ichihashi's defense claimed the killing was an accident, a claim met with disdain by those who knew Lindsay. Ultimately, Ichihashi was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison, bringing some closure to Lindsay's family and friends, though the heartbreak remained. Lindsay Hawker's tragic case had profound effects, raising awareness about safety and crime against women, especially expatriates living abroad. It inspired discussions about the importance of caution and personal safety, compounding broader dialogues around violence and victim. Her case is often cited in discussions about the risks faced by travelers and foreign workers worldwide, emphasizing that vigilance is a critical need, irrespective of perceived security in one's surroundings. The memory of Lindsay Hawker lives on, not just in her family and friends, but in the lessons gleaned from her tragic story. The life and untimely death of Lindsay Hawker remind us of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance. 1984. 9-year-old Christine Jessup steps off her school bus, her red hair bouncing in the autumn sun. She waves goodbye to her friends and vanishes into thin air. For 3 agonizing months, her family begged for answers. Then, on New Year's Eve, a gruesome discovery. Christine was found brutally murdered, stabbed, assaulted, left in a field 50 kilometers from home. And the man they blamed? Her own neighbor, a quiet, eccentric man named Guy Paul Morin. But was he really the killer? Or was this one of Canada's most shocking wrongful convictions? The police were desperate. A child killer was on the loose and the pressure was crushing. Then a lead. Christina's mother, Janet, mentioned a name: Guy Paul Morin. Morin was different, a musician, a loner, and in the eyes of detectives, the perfect suspect. But Morin had an alibi. He was at work. His co-workers vouched for him. The evidence? Flimsy. Yet they charged him anyway. The first trial ended in acquittal. The jury didn't buy it, but the Crown wasn't done. They appealed and got a second shot. Morin was sentenced to life, an innocent man, locked away for a crime he didn't commit. But then, science stepped in. New DNA testing proved it. The semen on Christina's clothes didn't match Morin. He was innocent. After 18 months in prison, the truth set him free. But if Morin didn't kill Christine, who did? For 36 years, the case went cold. Then a breakthrough. Investigators turned to genetic genealogy, tracing DNA through public databases. Hoover was a family friend. He knew Christine. He was at her funeral. And in 2015, he took his own secrets to the grave. Why did police ignore Hoover? Did tunnel vision blind them? Or was there something darker at play? The Kaufman inquiry exposed shocking police failures, coerced witnesses, junk science, a system hungry for a conviction at any cost. Sunset over Christina's grave. A single rose rests on the headstone. Christine Jessup's case changed Canadian law, but her killer never faced justice, and Morin never got back what was taken. And sometimes it hides in plain sight, What do you think? Did Hoover act alone? Were there others involved? Drop your theories below. 5 bodies, 1 killer, and a family secret so dark. This was the night the Lynn family vanished. By sunrise, 5 bodies would be found, bodies beyond recognition. 3:17 a.m., July 18, 2009. The last time anyone would see the Lynn family alive. Not a gun, not a knife. Something quieter, something intimate. When police arrived, they found all the doors locked, windows secure, no signs of forced entry, just 5 bodies arranged like broken dolls. The killer didn't just murder them, he tucked them in afterward. This is the story of the Lynn family murders. A crime so brutal, so calculated that it... Before the tragedy, the Lynn family were known in their community as hardworking, respectable, and kind. They had built a life many envied, successful, close-knit, and loved by their neighbors. Min Lin, the father, was admired as a dedicated family man. His wife, Lily, was described as gentle, caring, and devoted to her children. Their 2 young boys, Henry and Terry, were bright, full of promise. It was July 18, 2009. Just after 9 a.m., one of the Lynn family's relatives approached the house. Wife managed hadn't opened that morning. Customers waiting for their newspapers found the shutters closed. Something was wrong. As she stepped, no answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. Finally, she entered, and what she saw inside would remain etched in her memory forever. Room by room, the house revealed its horror. 5 bodies, lifeless. Each victim had been savagely bludgeoned, their faces unrecognizable from the violence of the attack. Blood soaked the sheets, the walls, the floors. It wasn't just murder. It was a massacre. Min Lin, Lily Lin, their 2 young sons, Henry and Terry, and Irene, all dead. The brutality suggested a weapon of blunt force, a hammer, perhaps. But investigators noticed something unusual. There were no signs of forced entry. Whoever had done this hadn't just stumbled in. They had planned it, they had known the house, and they had struck with terrifying precision. Detectives arriving at the scene knew immediately. This was no ordinary case. This was personal. This was calculated. Whoever was responsible had just wiped out an entire family in one night. For months, detectives lived inside the Lynn family murders. They ate, slept, and breathed the case. And slowly, the pieces locked together. And when the picture became clear, the realization was devastating. The monster they had been chasing wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some faceless intruder. It was family. On May 5, 2011, nearly 2 years after the massacre, police moved in. Their suspect was taken into custody, calm, expressionless. But behind that mask, detectives saw it. The cold calculation of a man who thought he was untouchable. His name was Robert Xie, brother-in-law to Min Lin, married to Kathy Lin, Min's sister, a man who sat at family dinners, a man who smiled in photographs, and yet, the very man police now accused of slaughtering 5 lives in one night. But why? Why would a man murder his own family by marriage? The answer was buried in jealousy, resentment. Xie had lived in the shadow of Min Lin's success, his thriving business, his respected place in the community, his close-knit family, while Robert struggled, bitter, humiliated. That bitterness had grown into hatred, and in the darkness of July 17, 2009, he acted on it. The trial was long, painstaking. The trial was long, painstaking. Years of evidence, witnesses, and forensic testimony. The defense fought hard, insisting there was no direct proof, no weapon, no clear link tying Robert Xie to the killings. But the prosecution painted a chilling picture. The DNA evidence, the inconsistencies in his alibi, the strange behavior after the murders, and most of all, the motive that burned beneath the surface, jealousy so consuming, it had driven him to erase an entire family. The jury listened, the nation watched, and finally, after one of the longest trials in Australian history, the verdict was read. Robert Xie, guilty of 5 counts of murder, sentenced to life imprisonment, no chance of parole. He would never walk free again. For the surviving relatives, there was no victory. No sentence could undo the horror of that July morning. But there was truth, and there was justice. The Lin family murders left scars far beyond one household, a community's sense of safety shattered, a family name forever tied to one of the most brutal crimes in Australian history. And the lesson? That evil doesn't always come from the shadows outside. Sometimes it sits at the table, smiles in your photographs, calls itself family. The house on Boundary Road stands silent now, but the echoes of that night remain, a reminder that behind closed doors, the darkest secrets can hide in plain sight.